Turning to politics now, Hillary Clinton still holds a commanding lead in the Democratic race for president at 50%. But a new CNN ORC poll shows challenger Bernie Sanders gaining on her. We will hear from Bernie Sanders in just a moment. But first, let's bring in senior Washington correspondent Joe Johns with more on those new poll numbers and a new warning from Donald Trump. Joe.
Good morning, Allison. On the key issue points that we asked questions about, Hillary Clinton still holds a commanding lead when it comes to foreign policy, handling ISIS, and gun policy. But speaking of the economy, which Bernie Sanders has been hammering away on, he's gained some ground, about 8 points, still trailing Clinton by the same margin. In the head-to-head matchups against the Republicans, this is one of the most interesting things about the poll, seeing Hillary Clinton almost running neck and neck with all three of the top Republicans, squeaking past Donald Trump, running 2 or 3 ticks behind both Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio. Important to say all three matchups within the margin of error. Meanwhile, the back and forth between Donald Trump and the former Secretary of State continuing. Donald Trump pushing back against Mrs. Clinton's allegations of sexism, tweeting, "Hillary, when you complain about a penchant for sexism, who are you referring to? I have great respect for women. Be careful." And then there was this tweet from Trump, quote, "Hillary said, I really deplore the tone and inflammatory rhetoric of his campaign. I deplore the death and destruction she caused. Stupidity." So more pushback from Trump in true Trump fashion. Chris?
No Merry Christmas in any of that, Joe Johns. That's for sure. Appreciate it. All right, so we do have an early Christmas present for you. You who say you want more policy discussed. You want less insider sniping. So we sat down with Senator Bernie Sanders. We talked polls, problems, solutions. It was the senator who eventually raised Donald Trump. Here's the first part of the discussion. Senator Sanders, thank you for joining us on New Day as always.
My pleasure.
So, the Santa Claus of political polls has brought you a gift, the highest number you've reached so far in the new CNN poll, 34%. Hillary down 8, you up 4. However, still a big gap. Hillary getting 50% commanding lead. What do you make of it?
Well, Chris, what I make of it is when we began this campaign, as you will recall, we were in 3-5% in the polls. I think all of the pundits considered us a fringe candidacy. Today, we perhaps are in the lead in New Hampshire, where I think closing in here in Iowa, and your poll seems to indicate that we have national momentum. So I think we have come a really long way in 7.5 months, and we're feeling really good. We have a tremendous volunteer network all over this country. We are raising significant sums of money from small individual contributions. So at this point, I have to tell you, we're feeling good.
From the poll, we can glean that the big issue that seems to be holding you back with those potential voters is foreign policy. That's where Hillary Clinton has her biggest advantage. There is a perception that you do not have the stomach or the head for what it takes to beat ISIS. Your response, sir?
Well, let me assure all of the people in our country that I have the stomach, I have the head. I think we have the approach not only to beat ISIS, but to crush ISIS and to destroy ISIS. And what my view is that we have got to learn a lesson from Iraq. And that lesson is it's not good enough just to be tough. We have got to be smart. And what that means is we cannot do it alone. We cannot and should not be involved in perpetual warfare in the Middle East. What we need to do is bring together a grand coalition led, as King Abdullah of Jordan reminds us, by Muslim troops on the ground. What we should do, along with the UK, France, and Russia, and other major powers, is give the Muslim nations on the ground the support they need from the air. We should be training troops. We should be doing special forces when necessary. But ultimately, this war will be won, and ISIS will be destroyed with our support and other great nations' support, taking on ISIS on the ground with Muslim troops.
The pushback is this talk of coalition has gone nowhere. There's been years of Democrats trying to do it, haven't gotten it done. What needs to be done here at home is protect the homeland. These refugees that you want to let in willy-nilly, they can hurt Americans. They fuel Americans' fears. You have to be tougher and put up more restrictions on immigration, specifically of those refugees, because there are terrorists in their numbers.
Well, needless to say, I disagree with that assertion. What we want to do as we destroy ISIS, we do not want to give up the values that have made us the greatest country in the history of the world, which, among other things, has been a beacon of hope for people in deep distress. Obviously, it goes without saying that there must be a very, very strong vetting process. I think we have to do a better job at that. But I do not think that what America is about, and I speak as somebody whose dad came to this country at the age of 17, I do not think what America is about is turning our backs on people in distress.
Donald Trump says we must look twice at those coming across the southern border. There are bad people among them. His numbers go up. He says we should think about banning all Muslims, at least temporarily. His numbers go up. He points at people like you and Hillary Clinton and says they are weak insiders and I am strong. And he is now the presumptive favorite in every poll and every metric we have. Is America ready for someone like Donald Trump and not ready for someone like you?
Well, I think that the more the American people understand what Trump stands for, which, among other things, is his assertion that wages in America are too high. He wants to, quote unquote, make America great. And here's a guy who's a billionaire who thinks that wages in America are too high. He thinks we should not raise the minimum wage. He wants to give hundreds of billions of dollars in tax breaks to his millionaire and billionaire friends. But I think creating and playing off the anxiety and the fears that the American people have, the fears about terrorism, the fears about our economy, and becoming a demagogue about that, and then trying to get us to hate Mexicans or to hate Muslims, I think that is a strategy that is not what America is supposed to be about. What I believe, in contrast to Mr. Trump, is that we bring our people together to focus on the real issues, which is the disappearing middle class, massive income and wealth inequality, a corrupt campaign finance system, the fact that we're not effectively addressing the international crisis of climate change, the fact that our kids can't afford to go to college and moms and dads can't afford childcare. Those are the issues we have to focus on, and we have to look at the greed of corporate America, the greed of Wall Street, which has had such a terrible impact on our economy and on millions of people. So I'm trying to bring people together to take on the wealthy and the powerful who have done so much to hurt the middle class. Trump is trying to play on fears and divide us up. At the end of the day, I believe that our approach will win.
Now, we have a couple more parts of the interview.
Good.
What the senator just said will be tested, because that is only one perspective on what makes America better than the situation it's in right now. Let's bring in our CNN political analyst. Senator Bernie Sanders at his highest point yet in CNN's new polling, but still has a lot of room to make up against Hillary Clinton. He says he thinks he will. I said why, and that's where this begins. It is time to test Senator Bernie Sanders on what he says the problem is with Trump, the media, and the solutions for the country. Here's the next part of the interview. You started off this interview using Donald Trump as a point of contrast. His popularity at this point is inarguable. How he is becoming popular has become a source of a lot of argument and criticism. The most recent volley, what he said about Hillary Clinton's break during the debate, what he said about how he characterized her loss to Barack Obama. You know, you're a guy who grew up in Brooklyn. You probably know the word that he used, maybe never heard it used as a verb before. But why is it working so well for him?
Well, Chris, you're going to have to ask the media precisely why. I mean, Trump is a smart guy. He's a media guy. He ran, he did a TV show. I'll give you one example, all right? A recent study showed that on ABC, Evening News, Trump, over a period of time, got 81 minutes of time. Bernie Sanders got 20 seconds. Now, you tell me why. And I think it has to do with the fact that Trump is very smart. He knows that media is not so interested in the serious issues facing this country. They love, bombastic remarks. They love silly remarks. If he says that somebody is sweating, my God, that is a major story, and all that silly business, the personal attacks, that kind of works. So I think this is more of an indictment of the media, actually, than it is of Trump.
Yeah, I don't see it. Look, do we cover him more? Yes. Why? He's #1 in the polls. He's highly
Why?
relevant. He drives the discussion.
But Chris, explain to me how he becomes #1. He boasts of the fact. This is what he says. He says, hey, I don't even have to pay for commercials. The media is going to put me on all of the time. Explain to me, and I know CNN may be different here, and you have been, very generous with me, but you explain to me how a major network in the evening news has 80 minutes of Trump, 20 seconds of Bernie Sanders. Does that make sense to anybody?
Well, look,
in many ways, I think it's fair to say, yeah, go ahead.
There's no question that Trump drives ratings, and that's always an influence in everything that we do. Or if you weren't as handsome and charismatic as you are, Senator, maybe you wouldn't get the time that you get. But you can't just wipe off all of this popularity that he has with a growing base of the GOP. They're putting him first in the polls, not because of the media. They say they hate the media. They just love Trump.
Chris, this is what I think is going on. I think that Trump is very effectively playing to the fears and the anxieties that millions of people in this country have, and have legitimately so. We're all concerned about the possibility of a terrorist attack against this country. We're all concerned about ISIS. We're all concerned about a disappearing middle class. You have in this country people who don't understand why it is that with increased productivity and technology, they're working longer hours for low wages. They're worried to death about their kids. They're worried about the economy. And Trump comes along and he says, I've got the solution. And what the solution is Mexicans coming into this country. Let's throw them all out. That'll solve all of our problems. It's Muslims. They're all terrorists. We have to hate them. Well, that is not the solution to our problems. That is simply scapegoating minorities, playing one group off against another. It's what demagogues have always done. But what we have got to do as a people is come together and say, yes, why is it that the middle class is in fact disappearing and almost all new wealth and income is going to the top 1%? Let's talk about it. And sometimes, Chris, to be honest with you, it can't be done in a 6-second soundbite. Why is it that we have the most unequal distribution of wealth and income of any major country on earth? Why is it that we have more people in jail than any other country on earth? Why is it that we're the only nation on earth that doesn't have health care for all people as a right? These are the kinds of debates that we have to have. And I would urge and beg the media to allow us to have that debate and not just pick up on Trump's one-liners.
Well, Senator Sanders, as you know, that's what we're doing right now. That's what New Day is about. We always appreciate you being on the show.
And I do know that, Chris. Chris, I do know that, and I appreciate the good work you're doing.
You're not easy to get. I got people #feeling the burn coming after me saying you don't have Sanders on enough. I can't get you on. You're too busy running around the country. Tell your people, lay off.
Well, all right. We will do our best to be with you.
You're always welcome to talk about what matters on this show. Senator, best to you and the family. Thank you for being on New Day.
All right, and a happy Merry Christmas and a happy holidays to everybody.
Appreciate it.
I'm the leading state sponsor of terrorism.